Diabetes is a disease that relates to the body's ability to control blood sugar levels using insulin. There are three main types of diabetes: type 1, type 2, and gestational. Type 1 diabetes, also referred to as early onset diabetes, is an autoimmune disorder in which the pancreas produces little or no insulin, and typically appears throughout one's adolescence. Symptoms include increased thirst, frequent urination, hunger, fatigue, and blurred vision. Treatment aims to maintain normal blood sugar levels through regular monitorization, insulin therapy, diet, and exercise. People with type 1 diabetes require insulin injections in order to control blood sugar levels, and type 1 is often thought to be caused by a combination of genetic predisposition and environmental factors, hence its lower prevalence compared to its counterpart type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is a chronic medical condition in which excessive sugar or glucose levels build up in your bloodstream. In type 2 diabetes, your body cannot effectively use insulin to bring glucose into your cells. This causes your body to rely on alternative energy sources in your tissues, muscles, and organs, creating a chain reaction that can cause a variety of symptoms, such as constant hunger, fatigue, weight loss, and excessive thirst. Type 2 diabetes is associated with hereditary factors, but more so with lifestyle risk factors. These lifestyle risk factors include a poor diet, not getting enough physical activity, and being overweight or obese. People with type 2 diabetes may be able to manage their condition through lifestyle changes. Gestational diabetes is similar to type 2 but occurs during pregnancy. It is linked with the type 2 diabetes, with many women who are diagnosed with it being diagnosed with type 2 soon after childbirth. Gestational diabetes is a risk factor for complications during labor and is connected with a large birth weight. As a whole, diabetes can be the underlying cause of other chronic diseases such as heart disease, liver disease, blindness, and limb amputation. Diabetes causes 1 in 3 new cases of end-stage kidney each year. Due to type 2 diabetes' high prevalence, type 2 diabetes attracts the largest amount of attention from society. Now, health risk factors refers to attributes, characteristics, or exposures that increase the likelihood of developing a disease or health disorder. Factors that may increase your risk of type 2 diabetes include weight, with being overweight and obese being classified as the most significant risk factor, fat distribution, with individuals who store the majority of their fat in their abdomen compared to thighs or hips are at greater risk, physical inactivity, family history/hereditary factors, race and ethnicity, with Hispanics, Africans, Asians, and Pacific Islanders having a higher probability of type 2 diabetes, blood lipid levels, and age, with your probability of type 2 diabetes increasing after the age of 45. Behavioral risk factors are risk factors that individuals have the most ability to modify. Behavioral risk factors of type 2 diabetes include being overweight or obese, excessive smoking, and insufficient physical activity. Protective factors includes attributes or characteristics that aid in preventing the contraction of type 2 diabetes. These factors include having an awareness of the types of food you are consuming, along with the necessary physical activity required to maintain a healthy lifestyle, which aids in reducing the risk of contracting type 2 diabetes. Furthermore, having access to sufficient medical aid acts as a protective factor, as it is essential to address any concerns or issues relating to the disease. And finally, being a part of a supportive environment, for example, living with parents who don't smoke and live healthily. This is a protective factor, as their behaviors can significantly influence a relation's behavior. Now, the extent of diabetes. There are 1 million people in Australia with diagnosed diabetes, and another 1/4 of people are believed to be undiagnosed as of 2017-2018. 85% of these cases are type 2 and only 12% are type 1. Along with that, over the last 20 years, the rate of diabetes has doubled in Australia to 4.2% of the population. 92% of type 2 diabetes occurs in adulthood, though 8% occurs in children. Diabetes is the 6th leading cause of death in Australia, contributing to 10% of deaths as of 2014. It is the cause of 2.5% of hospitalizations in 2011 and is an expensive disease, with over 8.2 million prescriptions being filled for related medication each year. Diabetes continues to be more common among males than females, with 6% of males being affected by the disease compared to 4% of females. And finally, the overall prevalence of diabetes has increased for both males and females since 2001, with both increasing by a total of 3%. Determinants affecting diabetes. Socioeconomic. Socioeconomic determinants include education levels, employment, and overall income. Income levels are a prevalent factor that affect the possibility of contracting type 2 diabetes, as individuals who have a low socioeconomic status have an increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Their lower disposable income levels result in purchasing and eating cheap processed foods and foods high in artificial sugar, leading to an increased risk of type 2 diabetes, as the consumption of these foods contributes to increasing an individual's weight and cholesterol levels. Groups at risk. Furthermore, disadvantaged groups at risk include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, low socioeconomic individuals, overseas-born people, and people born in rural and remote areas. As represented in the diagram provided, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have an overall lower life expectancy. ATSI males have a life expectancy of 70.5 years and women have 74.6 years, compared to non-ATSI with 79.8 years and 83.1 years respectively. Furthermore, as represented in this graph, ATSI individuals have lower overall education levels compared to non-ATSI. As of 2019, 82% of ATSI attended school compared to 92% of non-ATSI. The median adjusted weekly household income among Indigenous Australians aged 15 and over was $623, compared with $935 for non-Indigenous Australians, as stated by the ABS in 2019. This indicates that the Indigenous median weekly income was 33% lower. The lower overall income results in the consumption of, quote, unhealthy, high artificial sugar-filled foods. Socioeconomic determinants have proven to put ATSI individuals at greater risk, with the disadvantaged community having 13% higher prevalence of diabetes than non-ATSI. Low socioeconomic individuals are affected due to their lower overall levels of disposable income. This results in the economically disadvantaged to consume foods with higher artificial sugars, such as processed foods, due to their more affordable price, further contributing to their increased prevalence of diabetes. Overseas-born people are disadvantaged due to their language barrier they experience. The language barrier is detrimental to them socioeconomically because it hinders their ability to receive employment from Australian businesses. This lack of employment can result in them receiving lower overall incomes and similarly to low socioeconomic individuals resorting to the consumption of, quote, unhealthy high sugar foods, further contributing to type 2 diabetes. Individuals residing in rural and remote areas are at higher risk of diabetes due to their overall separation from urban cities. Due to this, individuals living in rural areas earn 32% less annual income than those who reside in metropolitan cities. Furthermore, the lack of high-end education and employment opportunities also proves detrimental to their socioeconomic levels, further leading to consuming foods and habits that initiate a high risk of diabetes. The sociocultural factors include family, peers, religion, culture, and media influences. If your family and peers purchase high-sugar foods such as Coca-Cola, individuals residing with them have a high chance of consuming the product, contributing to increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Similarly, regarding the media's prevalent advertising of high-sugar foods on free-to-air television, in particular KFC advertisements, specifically with the NRL, Big Bash League, and certain clubs in the AFL, the media influence constitutes to individuals becoming more obliged to consume the product due to its frequent advertising and overall reach to a broad range of individuals. Accompanied by the affordable pricing of the advertised product, it results in increasing the amount of individuals at risk of contracting type 2 diabetes. The main groups at risk that are affected by sociocultural factors include low socioeconomic individuals and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are greatly affected by family and peer pressures and behaviours. Epidemiology data reveals that ATSI families are less educated and have less money, contributing to the family upbringing. Almost two-thirds, 62% of Indigenous adults identify with a clan, tribal or language group, an increase from 54% in 2002. These statistics show the effects of sociocultural determinants in ATSI health, as ATSI individuals are brought up in these communities and are greatly influenced by this culture. Similarly, this also creates poor access to health services and poor examples being set by adults. This is because ATSI individuals naturally have a higher risk of type 2 diabetes due to general unhealthy practices being passed on from generation to generation through family and peers. Furthermore, the media, as represented previously, greatly influenced low socioeconomic individuals, resulting in this disadvantaged group indulging in foods that increase the risk of type 2 diabetes through being overweight and increased sugar intake. The environmental determinants refer to the location and condition of living. Individuals living in poor climates with high levels of pollution with limited space and opportunity to complete physical activity raises the risk of type 2 diabetes. This is because these limiting factors don't give an individual the ability to combat the risk of diabetes. Groups at risk referring to environmental determinants include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, those residing in rural and remote areas, and the socio-economically disadvantaged. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have a significantly lower access to health services compared to other Australians, contributing to the gap in health outcomes. ATSI individuals in 2008 were reported having difficulty accessing health services such as dentists and GPs due to the long waiting times or the services simply being unavailable. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have higher renting rates than owning a property, higher rates of homelessness, and are more likely to live in rural or remote locations because of their culture. As a result of having insufficient access to health services, higher rates of homelessness, and a higher likeliness to reside in a remote location, ATSI individuals in general are exposed to high risks of diabetes, constituted by their inability to receive aid from a medical professional regarding their diabetes and their ability to prevent receiving the disease through pollution pressures, poor climate, and a lack of space for physical activity. Individuals residing in outer regional and remote areas populate a high percentage of smokers, overweight or obese individuals, insufficiently active individuals, alcoholics, and high blood cholesterol as represented in the table. Rural citizens statistically run a higher risk of obesity, with 70% of individuals living in remote or rural areas are classified as overweight, compared to 60% in major cities. Similarly to ATSI individuals, in rural and remote areas, the number of GPs employed is rising but is still lower than the rates in major cities. This limited access to general medical services increases the risk of individuals residing in rural and remote areas contracting diabetes, due to their lack of medical aid. There is also an inadequate distribution of medical specialists and medical technology, further contributing to the increased risk of diabetes. In reference to socioeconomically disadvantaged individuals, due to their lower levels of income, socioeconomically disadvantaged individuals have insufficient access to medical services due to the overall costs and their increased likelihood of residing in remote areas, as it is more affordable in comparison to suburban areas. And as a result, this increases their likelihood of contracting type 2 diabetes.